Hey there, Wolfpack fans. It's me again, Kenton Gibbs, with my main man, Grayson Boone. And folks, we're here to talk some draft with you. There were lots of NC State players that entered into the draft. Only one name we heard called in the draft. But a lot of guys who got picked up who were signed immediately after the draft. Grayson and I are going to talk those players, what those teams are getting, and why it may even be better to go undrafted sometimes and end up in the back of the seventh round. Grayson, you ready to get into it?
I'm ready. We got some Pack Pros to break down.
Absolutely. I'm super excited that we got new Pack Pros in the building. But first, I got to tell you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. So, folks, we are getting into today's episode where we're talking all things NC State and the draft, NFL draft that just passed us.
You are Locked On NC State, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. So, yeah, Kenton, as we were just talking about, another NFL draft has came and went. We have 9 new Pack Pros to celebrate. Of course, only one of these was actually drafted, which I thought was a bit surprising, but we will get into that in just a second. I want to start off this episode with the best thing I saw today. Our watchers on YouTube are now seeing this graphic I just put up. This was posted, of course, by Pack Football. It's a really cool edit for you Panthers fans out there, as you might get a pretty good look at what it's going to look like as you have now Chandler Zavala joining your offensive line next to former Wolfpacker Ike Ekwonu. So they are now reignited down in Charlotte. Very cool to see. I can only imagine how excited the two of them are to be back on the same O-line. But cool for NC State fans as well, as we keep Chandler in the state of North Carolina. I know a lot of NC State fans are also Panthers fans, so a lot to be excited about here. But what were your thoughts here about Chandler Zavala getting picked up by the Panthers?
You know, I was excited to see him get picked up by the Panthers. And this is a moment where in today's game, if your number one draft pick is going to be a quarterback, you need to make sure that your offensive line is shored up. And the Panthers did that, right? You drafted Big Ig last year. You drafted Chandler this year. And I'm going to tell you what, Big Ig looked phenomenal last year, right? Everybody talked about, oh, he looked bad in that first game, and Myles Garrett made him look bad. Myles Garrett does that to everybody. He does that to everybody. I don't care how long you've been in the league, especially if that's your first NFL start or one of your first NFL starts. Like, what do you expect there?
You could put a literal brick wall at offensive line, and Myles Garrett's probably going to kick a hole through it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It may get off 1 or 2 good pass sets. By the fourth quarter, there'll be a lot of holes in that wall. Now, with that being said, again, Big Chan is a guy that when you look at him, you don't think ballerina dancer's feet, but that's what he has. He's a big man that can move in space. And the beautiful thing about him being able to move the way he does is not only in pass protection, but also what we're seeing more and more is the college game being integrated and meshed into the NFL. There are more and more different types of screens being thrown. And when you have a guard like him who can lead your runner in space, and you've got a defensive back looking up and seeing 320, 315 pounds barreling towards him, it's not a pretty sight. It's not a pretty sight, you know. So this is a really good get for the Panthers. Again, NC State fans, we should be super excited here to see these two reunited. They're peaches and herb. I'm sure they'll be singing reunited in the locker room in no time.
I think, for Panthers fans, it's exciting to have two of these NC State guys, not just on the offensive line, but two of these guys that pride themselves in their pancakes that they provide with the offensive line. It's kind of become famous here at NC State with, Coach Doeren handing out the syrup bottles that have made an appearance on ACC Network a couple times, which is pretty funny. But a lot of good homecoming for Chandler Zavala here, being picked up by the Panthers. But now we're going to get into the rest of the signings because Chandler was the only draftee here. Our first slide is Chandler Zavala. He was drafted in the 4th round at pick 114. And now we're going to get into the undrafted free agents, the first of which is Thayer Thomas. Thayer Thomas was signed by the Minnesota Vikings he'll be taking his talents to the great state of Minnesota. You might see him grittying on the field with a Justin Jefferson this year if Thayer does get some playing time. But I'm very happy for Thayer. I can't exactly say I'm surprised that he wasn't drafted, but he was a guy that I knew would land somewhere regardless. As talented he is, as hard of a worker he is, from now walk-on to NFL signee, he has earned it every bit of the way. Super happy for Thayer. What are your thoughts here, Kenton?
Absolutely. I would never root for the Vikings, but I would never root against the Pac Pro either. So it's exciting to see Thayer get picked up. I hope he does all the good things. And I'll tell you what, in him, the Vikings are getting a guy that has shown he can play all over the place, but excels in the slot. Does immense amounts of damage in that slot. When you get him matched up against potentially a safety, oh man, as an offensive coordinator, you got to be licking your chops with a weapon like Thayer Thomas, who has shown he's going to play bigger than this frame. I believe the 40 was a what, 4.47 or something?
It's like 4.47, 4.48.
4.48. He's a guy that he has some wheels on him and all that good stuff. And we've seen it. This guy should be nicknamed 7-Eleven because whatever happens, he's always open. So Thayer Thomas to the Vikings, I think that's good on all parties.
You know, a lot of analysts make the joke about a sneaky slot receiver, about sneaky athleticism, but I think despite that being said about possibly a Thayer Thomas here, I think he will be kind of sneaky because, you know, a walk-on, it's like, all right, you got to get wrote off, you know, by default. I think Thayer, if he hasn't shown us enough here at NC State at the ACC level, he's going to outwork the next guy. And so I will not be surprised to see Thayer catching passes on Sunday when it's all said and done.
And here's another thing about being signed to his position, especially as a skill position. You are likely going to, if you're going to make the roster and do good things, it is going to start with your work on special teams. If you look at Terrell Davis, what his career became, one of the biggest plays of his career that got him on those Broncos teams and secured his roster spot was a massive hit on a kickoff. That's the type of deal that you're looking at here. And that humility, that walk-on spirit, that I don't care what I have to do, I'll do it just to be here. That type of mentality will serve an undrafted free agent well.
You mentioned special teams. That's a good transition here. We're going to spend basically the rest of the episode breaking down the defensive signees because there were so many, but we had one pickup from special teams. That is Mr. Perfect himself, Christopher Dunn, our Lou Groza award-winning kicker, the greatest kicker in NC State history. I can't believe that's a real sentence because it is factually correct. He is the greatest kicker in school history, potentially even ACC history.
I was about to say, but ACC.
He just put together. I think he seriously flies under the radar, and I think this is why it's so surprising to me that he did not get drafted, is he just had one of the greatest college kicking seasons we've ever seen.
And so this is why I talk so much about the pool being inflated, because there were so many additional draft picks. When's the last time we saw a kicker or punter get drafted?
From NC State?
No, I'm just saying in general. I believe there were two last year, right?
There were two kickers taken and that were not named Christopher Dunn when Christopher Dunn was the #1 kicker in college.
But it's always, you're always going to have a hard time in terms of special teams. You're always going to have a hard time as a full-time special teamer getting drafted. And, you know, it really is crazy that Chris Dunn didn't get drafted being a Lou Groza Award winner, but we've seen it before, especially with the kicking position. I think that this one is the most erratic of all the positions in terms of where you are drafted truly has nothing, not the slightest modicum to do with how successful you'll actually be at the next level.
Yeah, with kicking especially, punting is a little bit different, but kicking especially, you got to earn it every step of the way. It really does not matter whether you're drafted. I mean, I'm not going to say first round. No kickers are drafted in the first round, but
there was one. The Raiders drafted, what was it, Big Janikowski in the first round way back when, I believe. Yeah,
he turned out to be a legend, so I guess that one paid off.
Yeah,
but yeah, Chris Dunn, you know, I thought he definitely would have had his name called, but
for sure
he got the signing, and it's on him from here. So congratulations to Chris Dunn on this, and I also look forward to him splitting the uprights at the next level as well.
The reality is simple. All you can ask for is a shot. That's all you can ask for. If you're in the room, if you get to where you need to be, where good things are happening, and you have the opportunity to prove yourself, what more can you ask for? What more can you truly ask for than that? So I'm betting on him making the team. I'm betting on him doing some good things. I'm betting on Chris Dunn because, like you said, he was Mr. Automatic last year. So that's just the way that we're going to chalk that one up. And speaking of betting, I've got to talk to you all about FanDuel. Folks, it is very clear that if you are making a fast break into FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, you're making a great decision because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Trust me, it's one of those things that how could you not want to be a part of something where either you win your bet or you win some bonus bets back? It's a win-win situation. There's no better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
So now we're going to spend the remainder of this episode breaking down the defensive signees. And as I mentioned, not exactly surprised to see the bulk of our new Pack Pros being on the defensive side of the ball, as that was where the majority of our talent was in the 2022 season. But Tony Gibson has a whole lot to be proud of this 2023 class going out. A couple of these names were also extremely surprising to not heard called in terms of the draft, but these are all guys I fully expected to get signed, and outside of only a couple, they were. So we're going to start here with Drake Thomas. He was signed by the Las Vegas Raiders. I love this for Drake Thomas. I think the team itself and, their reputation for gritty football and hard-nosed defense, who does that sound like? Sounds like Drake Thomas to me. So
absolutely.
I think he could end up being a star for the Raiders out in Las Vegas.
I'll tell you what, Drake Thomas is another one of those guys. It's all grit and grind. It's all whatever you need him to do. He plays off the edge. He plays off the ball. He's going to take on blockers. Whatever you need him to do, he's going to show up and give it everything he's got to do it. Is he the tallest guy in the world? No. Does he have the longest limbs in the world? No. So what? He produces more than most folks in the world, and that's what matters.
For a guy at his size to finish last year, I think he had over 100 tackles, which is absurd at
Absolutely.
the ACC level itself. But the season he had in 21, stepping up when we had so many injuries to Peyton Wilson and Isaiah Moore, who we'll get to in just a second, to him to step up and captain that defense and still lead it to be at an elite level despite all the injuries we took on, and then to double down and have possibly an even better season last year. Unbelievable motor on this guy. And that to me, I was like, there's no way he doesn't get drafted, but then he goes undrafted. But he was one of the first names you saw immediately was signed as they started to all trickle out after the draft had ended. But no surprise here to see Drake Thomas put pen to paper with an NFL team. And I like I mentioned, fully expect to see him lighten somebody up on Sundays very soon. Next,
over 100 tackles last year. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying over 100 tackles last year, 7.5 sacks as well. Super productive as a pass rusher. 6 the year before that. This is a guy that he can give it to you any way you want it. On the ball, off the ball, he can give it to you.
Yeah. And another guy that falls in that same category, Isaiah Moore. He was signed by the Kansas City Chiefs. He's kind of cut from the same cloth as Drake is. Just the instincts and the leadership ability and the hard-nosed football, so the intangibles you can't teach, Isaiah Moore's got them. And you add that in with the fact that the adversity he's gone through with the ACL injury toward the back half of the 21 season to come back and have a very successful year in 22. I thought somebody would take a chance on him. And, the Chiefs are doing so with this free agent signing, but I thought for sure that both Drake Thomas and Isaiah Moore would get drafted. But this is, Isaiah Moore's a situation where he could very quickly turn out to be a steal, a diamond in the rough, if you will. I expect him to hit the ground running, not just physically, but metaphorically, because he's going to light somebody up in the hole, I'm sure, in their mini camps. And I think he's going to turn heads pretty quickly out in Kansas City.
Head coach Dave Doeren is a huge Chiefs fan. And lo and behold, one of his guys is going to the Chiefs.
Probably no one happier than Coach Doeren.
No one happier than Coach Doeren, except for, of course, Isaiah and his family. Nobody in the world is happier than Coach Doeren. This is a situation where the Chiefs are getting a heady linebacker. He knows what offenses want to do before they know what they want to do. He is a guy who reads diagnosis, gets downhill right away. Like you talked about, there are the injury concerns with the ACL tear and all that, and he struggled a little bit with lateral movement last year, which is to be expected when you're recovering from an ACL tear. But as he gets healthier, gets better, gets more confidence in that knee and all that, I think, like you said, he could turn out to be a great steal.
I think he's going to fit in quite nicely with that Chiefs linebacking core.
Absolutely.
Up next, we have Tanner Ingle. He's a safety, taking his talents out to L.A. He's going to be signing with the Rams. I love this signing for Tanner. I think the energy he provides that we've seen throughout his time here in Raleigh, the human hit stick, and the Rams really need that kind of guy, because I feel like they've lost a lot from their Super Bowl year, and they're kind of figuring out a new direction for their program. And I think Tanner Ingle can be a key piece, at some point down the road in figuring out what they want to do defensively. And, another guy, just an intensity you just cannot teach. It comes so naturally to him, and very happy for Tanner. I think he's going to make the most of his opportunities in LA.
When you talk about an intensity that you cannot teach, do you know where that serves players well most often? On special teams. And this is a guy that I could see being a special teams demon in the NFL for quite some time. He loves to make that big hit in space. What better place would there be to do so than on somebody's kickoff or punt team? I hope that he can get in some defensive snaps as well, as his instincts warranted, his playmaking ability warrants it. He's another one of those guys that's kind of in that same boat as Isaiah Moore, in that you worry about the injury history a little bit, you worry about the targeting history a little bit, but again, Tanner is a bad man. He comes through, and if you meet him in a hole, if you're a punt returner and you look down and you see that 10 flashing your way, he's coming with some bad intentions. And I don't mean Michael Jackson bad. I mean your mother-in-law's bean casserole bad. It's going to be nasty. It's going to leave something bad. It's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth type nasty.
He's coming with the stick with him.
Absolutely.
Up next, we have Tyler Baker-Williams, who signed with the LA Chargers. I think this is another guy you won't maybe expect to hear a whole lot out of him, but another guy could rise through the ranks. And the Chargers, they've struggled defensively over the years. I don't think I'm shocking anybody by saying that, as I think they could use a lot of help with the, what they're able to do on offense. But this is a guy, Tyler Baker-Williams accomplished a lot, I think, in a shorter amount of time at NC State. He had like a meteoric rise here the past couple of years, and could certainly find himself cracking the rotation at some point out in LA.
Absolutely. Playmakers make plays. And Tyler Baker-Williams did it wherever he was lined up, in the slot, on the outside, even at times where he was a little bit deeper, almost in a safety type of capacity. He just makes plays. And in the NFL level, that's what it's about. It's about when that ball is in the air and you're in the moment of truth, who's going to make the play? Tyler Baker-Williams finds ways to make those plays. Are there certain things that you look at in terms of like, oh, he's not the fastest and all that shit and all that good stuff? Sure, absolutely. But he is still very productive, a playmaker, and a guy that I believe has the type of mentality that can find his way to an NFL roster.
We got a couple more guys to break down, but first, a quick word from our sponsors. Stick around with us. All right, we have our last couple defensive signees to break down here. Kenton, I think you're going to like this one. We have Corey Durden, the defensive lineman, heading to your Detroit Lions. What are your thoughts?
Aleem McNeil's there, making plays, doing good things. Everybody says, oh, the Lions should have got Jalen Carter. They should have got Jalen Carter. Folks, don't worry about it. Trust Brad Stevens. I mean, trust Brad Holmes. Trust Dan Campbell. No, but seriously, Corey Durden was a guy that I truly don't understand why NFL teams didn't like more, simply because this is a guy that was battling double and triple teams every pass rush opportunity and still being highly destructive in teams' backfields. Being a guy who was producing at a high level, despite the fact that there were times where he was rushing against 3 offensive linemen and still getting home. Corey Durden, I think, he has the potential in this type of situation where he's probably going to be a 3 technique at the next level. But just talking about what we saw him do in college, he did enough to show me he can play at the next level. He can play at the next level. He can do it at the next level. When I talk about a defensive tackle being disruptive, I played defensive tackle, and so I know the stats don't always tell the story. That's not always the case. But I'll tell you what, if you turn on that game film and you flash what was going on for NC State for these past few years, I would venture you to find me a play where there aren't at least 4 to 6 hands on offense on number 48. And if there aren't, I'd venture you to find me a play where he's not near the ball as well.
You know, Corey being a transfer that came into the program from Florida State, he had a lot of anticipation following him leading into Raleigh. And I think he very easily, he was as anticipated. He anchored that defensive line the past couple years, and it was great. We're going to miss his defensive presence on that D-line. I hope he can rub off on some of the guys we still have here in Raleigh, because we're surely going to miss his talents here in Raleigh. But circling this out, rounding it out, our final guy here that got a undrafted free agent signing deal, Derek Pitts signs with the Tampa Bay Bucks. This is a guy too, another transfer, put in the work here in Raleigh, started to make a name for himself, became a fixture in the defensive secondary, and another guy. I mean, I of course I'm biased, but I say, oh well, maybe they can all make some NFL money. Yeah, of course, he's talented enough. You got the deal with the Bucks here. Another team kind of trying to refigure what they're trying to do, both offensively now with Brady retiring and defensively. So we could see Pitts on Sundays more often than not as well.
When I think of Pitts, I think of 2 things that are pivotal to the cornerback position: length and confidence. Those are 2 things that this young man has in spades. He is the type of guy, he can get burned one play, get up like it's nothing, get back and want to cover again on the next, because that's the type of guy he is. And also, I want to say he's what? 6'2", 6'1".
All right.
He's 6'2", 6'1". Long arms, long arms. He makes those passing windows real short on you. You think that you got a window, you think that the ball is going to get there in time, and next thing you know, Pitts is reaching out one of those long arms to knock a ball away. Did he have moments where he kind of struggled at the moment of truth at times in college? Absolutely. But he's at the pro level now. He's got his opportunity. He's got his shot. And it's never about what you have done. It's about what you can do and what you will do. If you can get that little bit of panic at times cleaned up in that moment of truth, he can make himself some NFL money, like you said.
For sure. And Kenton, before we get out of here, I want to run a couple more names by you, because we haven't seen them put pen to paper quite yet. I want to get your takes on it. But first of all, we have our center, Grant Gibson, who's a 5-year guy here in Raleigh. Another fixture on the offensive line, because we've had so many over the past couple of years, but haven't seen him come out with a deal yet. I'm a little bit shocked by that. I think in the coming months, you probably will see Gibson sign with the team, but very, very surprised to see him kind of go under the radar right out of the chute here.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt that he is going to get signed somewhere, and somebody's going to love the center that they signed there. I'm also a little confused about that, because the productivity is there. He was a guy that, I'll tell you this much. One of the big things that I use to talk about players, or when I say, how impactful is a player? What does your team look like without you? Is a question that I often ask, right? We saw what this offensive line looked like without Grant, and this is no disrespect to the guys that were still there. It was abysmal.
It was night and day.
We went from pretty good up front. We went from, this is considerably possibly one of the strengths of the team, to whenever he was out, it was just like, do we have scholarship guys on our offensive line? And so I'm a little confused as to how he didn't get signed. But I'll tell you this much: if he does get, again, all he needs is that foot in the door. If he gets that foot in the door, he's got the opportunity. He can make something shake at that point. But like I said earlier, in some cases, it might be better to get to decide where you go than to be in the situation where you get drafted 7th round to a team that's like not super high on you, but they're like, I guess we'll take a 7th round flyer where you're probably going to get gotten rid of anyway. It's better to get to decide, and you and your agent kind of work out where you want to go instead.
And then the second guy I had in mind here was Cyrus Fagan, safety. Another guy that transferred from Florida State to us, much like Corey Durden. Cyrus was a playmaker, I thought, the last couple of years, all over the field in the secondary. I can't even count how many pass breakups he had because it felt like it was nearly at least one on every drive. But kind of surprised to see him go unsigned as well, but would not be surprised to see him sign here pretty soon with somebody.
Here's the thing about Cyrus Fagan that really is kind of it's really confusing to me in terms of him not. Well, actually, it's not confusing so much as it is like disappointing. We know it's kind of because of last year, but he had back problems that you saw bothering him at times. You could tell he was running tight. He just couldn't really fully get loose at times. But when healthy, I mean, he was very good. He was very productive. Like you said, it seemed like every time you looked up, somebody was getting the ball jarred loose, and you saw Jiggy getting up and doing his dance, letting them know this is a no-fly zone when he's on the field. And he just a playmaker supreme. Again, the NFL is very big on measurables and all that good stuff, and so they're going to look at the 40 and say, oh, he can't run, he can't do this, he can't do it. I'll tell you what, turn on the tape. Just turn on the tape. Show me what you see and saying, oh, he can't do this, he can't do that, and we'll have a conversation. But at the end of the day, I'm watching Cyrus Fagan keep us in the game, in the bowl game. I'm watching him make big plays all around the field. And to say that, or to see that he hasn't been signed yet, I don't know what's going on there, but I'm sure he'll be fielding some calls very soon in terms of teams knocking on his door for his services.
Absolutely. Well, I believe that rounds out our NFL draft recap for our newly minted Pack Pros coming out of the NC State program. Very amped to see where all these guys do end up with their free agent signings, and of course Chandler with who's our big marquee name in the NFL draft this year, getting signed by the Panthers. But Kenton, what are your last thoughts here on all the signings?
I want y'all to again remember, it is not about where you go, it's about what you do when you get there. How many Pack Pros have we seen go kind of unheralded, kind of under the radar, kind of nobody loves them, nobody thinks about them in terms of the draft, and then all of a sudden we look up at, man, is that guy making a play again? Man, is that guy doing it again? Man, what's happening with him? Trust me, these players have game, will travel. If they can do it, they'll get the opportunity to show it. It may not be this year for some of these guys. It may be a year from now. It may be mid-season like we saw with Bam Knight. Who knows when it'll happen? Just trust the process and trust that these guys are putting in the work it takes to represent the Wolfpack in phenomenal fashion.
Absolutely. And Wolfpack fans, feel free to drop some comments on this video. Tell us your thoughts. I want to know what you think about how the draft turned out, where you thought guys would maybe where they would go versus where they ended up, who you thought would get drafted versus just signed. We want to know what you think as well. Feel free to toss us a like as well. We've been seeing those subscriber numbers. They continue to rise, so we very much appreciate you all for that. As Kenton mentioned, I believe it was last week, we're going to try and do some more interactive things, maybe a mailbag episode where you guys can ask us some questions to generate more discussion. A lot of fun things on the horizon for Locked On Wolfpack. But for this show, myself and Kenton Gibbs, thank you all for coming out. And as always, go Pack.
Go Pack.
You are Locked On NC State, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.